Why this works. A Beurre Blanc is the first sauce in the French repertoire that asks you to hold a working emulsion at temperature for several minutes. Not stir it together once and walk away, but keep it alive while you build. Every detail in the technique exists to make that possible. The first step is a reduction. 200 grams of wine and 50 grams of vinegar boil down to about 30 milliliters of syrup, which looks like a story about removing water. But the real work is concentration. Acid stabilizes butter emulsions. The more concentrated acid you carry into the base, the more forgiving the rest of the build becomes. A watery reduction can't hold a butter emulsion at all. Then comes the temperature. Cold butter is itself an emulsion, roughly 80% fat, 16% water, and 4% milk proteins, all held in suspension. Whisked into a warm acid base, each cube releases its water slowly into the liquid phase, while the milk proteins quietly do the stabilizing work. The window for this is narrow. Below about 45 degrees Celsius, the butter doesn't melt evenly. Above the low 60 Celsius, the milk proteins start to denature and the fat releases as oil, at which point the sauce breaks. The whole sauce wants to live somewhere around the low to mid 50 Celsius, which is well below a simmer. This is one of the few sauces where a probe thermometer earns its place in your hand. Even so, the pan feels warm but not hot to a handheld near it is usually a better instrument than a number. The shallot does two jobs. The minced flesh adds savor. The aromatic compounds released during reduction bind into the acid base. Classically, the shallot is strained out at the end. A beurre blanc on a fine plate is a clean, glossy sauce. In Brittany, where the dish comes from, the shallots are often left in for body. Neither is wrong. Common mistakes: heat too high. Target: sauce temperature 60 to 75 degrees Celsius. Watch the surface. It should never bubble or simmer. Why it matters? The single most common failure. Above 80 degrees Celsius, the butter's water-fat emulsion breaks, producing thin, oily liquid with shallot floating in it. Below 50 degrees Celsius, the butter solidifies and the sauce won't form. What to do? Keep the pan on the lowest heat setting. Use a heat diffuser if needed. Lift the pan off the burner periodically if the sauce gets too warm. Workarounds: broken sauce, pull off heat, whisk in another cold cube. Sometimes the temperature drop recovers it. Truly broken? Strain, return reduction to pan, start the butter incorporation again. Adding too many cubes at once. Target 2 to 3 small cubes of cold butter at a time, fully incorporated before adding more. Why it matters? Butter added faster than the emulsion absorbs floats as melted fat. Once you see melted butter on the surface, the sauce is broken. What to do? Cut butter into 1 centimeter cubes ahead. Whisk in 2 to 3 at a time. Watch the sauce thicken before adding the next batch. Workarounds: for maximum reliability, use very cold butter cubes straight from the fridge. Stopping the whisk. Continuous whisking from the moment the first butter cube enters until the sauce is plated. Why it matters? Reducing too little. Target: wine plus shallot reduced to about 50 milliliters. Syrupy consistency. Why it matters? A watery base can't carry the emulsion. Insufficient reduction means the sauce stays thin no matter how much butter you whisk in. What to do? Reduce uncovered until you can see the bottom of the pan when you tilt it. About 4 minutes of vigorous boiling. Workarounds: don't overtrust a visual estimation. Actually measure with a ladle if unsure. 50 milliliters exactly. Reducing too far. Target: stop reduction at 50 milliliters. Past 25 milliliters, the sauce becomes aggressively acidic and faintly bitter. Why it matters? Past the right point, the sauce is over-acidic. A beurre blanc should taste lively and bright, not sour. What to do? Watch the volume. When in doubt, stop reducing earlier. Workarounds: over-reduced, add a splash of white wine or water to dilute before adding butter. Reheating. Target: serve within 20 minutes of completion. Never reheat over active heat. Why it matters? Beurre blanc cannot survive a return to active heat. The emulsion breaks irreversibly. What to do? Time the sauce to coincide with the dish. Hold in a warm spot, 50 to 60 degrees Celsius at most. Workarounds: for dinner party staging, use lecithin, 1/4 teaspoon per cup, as a stabilizer. Sauce holds longer, slightly less classic. What to look for? The reduction. About 2 generous tablespoons of slick syrup. Shallots no longer in liquid, but wearing a glaze. The pan after the heat drops. Warm to a hand held near it. Not hot. If it feels hot, pull off for 20 seconds. First butter cubes. Glossy, slightly cloudy liquid. No oil layer on top. That cloudiness is the emulsion forming. Mid-build, the sauce thickens visibly with each addition. By halfway through the butter, it should coat the back of a spoon. Done, glossy, pale, holds soft body on the spoon. If you've gone too far and it's stiff, a teaspoon of warm water whisked in will loosen it. A Beurre Blanc is closely related to a Beurre Monte. Both are warm butter emulsions held below the breaking point. The difference is the base. Beurre Monte starts from a small amount of water. Beurre Blanc starts from a reduced wine. The technique is the same. The flavor lives in the reduction. Chef's view. There are several views on whether to add cream to Beurre Blanc. The modern restaurant kitchen often whisks 30 to 50 grams of cream into the reduction before the butter goes in. The milk fat widens the temperature window and gives the cook more forgiveness. The classical Loire Valley original uses no cream. The only fats are butter. My view, no cream, and call it what it is. If you want a more forgiving sauce, that's Beurre Blanc à la crème, a different dish. The reason classical Beurre Blanc tastes like Beurre Blanc is that nothing else is competing with the butter for the surface of your tongue. A cream-stabilized version is easier to make, but loses the very thing the dish is famous for. The other quiet decision is whether to strain. For fish on a clean plate, strain. A glossy, perfectly clear pale yellow pool is part of the visual register. For a more rustic plate, or for fish with a strong character of its own, leave the shallots in. The texture of small shallot bits is not a flaw in the home kitchen. It's a sign of where the sauce comes from. This recipe is the test case for whether you have internalized what an emulsion really is. If a Beurre Blanc still feels like a coin flip after 20 attempts, the diagnosis is almost always one of two things: heat too high or whisking too hesitant.